Hello everyone, Shirley here, long time no see, and welcome to the War Within beta. Today we're going to be looking at the massive changes coming to Warrior in general, but ARMS specifically, and even further in depth into the Colossus specialization for ARMS coming up, because Slayer isn't quite working right on beta still. A couple of the talents aren't working as they should be, so that'll be for a later date, but Slayer today, I'm not going to be going over every single talent change and reposition because every week the beta is changing, but I do want to talk about it, get my thoughts out here. We're going to go over all the big points and things that are, synergizing and thoughts on everything. So jumping right into it today, there's going to be a lot of talent tree discussion, as you might imagine, as well as, a little bit of demonstration in the mosh pit down here on all the target dummies on beta. But yeah, jumping right into it, the latest build changed up a few key talents. One of the big ones was these two, Blademaster's Torment and Warlord's Torment, two really popular talents on live for a capstone on Avatar. Warlord's Torment would give you Recklessness on Colossus Smash and Avatar. Now it's only on Avatar, and the Rage generation has been nerfed. The duration has been buffed a little bit, but basically it's not very good as it sits right now on beta. So we're in a weird situation where all these capstones aren't great, and the way that they've redesigned the warrior tree, you kind of have to go down each branch now, because the reinforced plating talent into Arm to the Teeth is now on the right side. So we're kind of forced to go right up to Spear, even though Spear hasn't been buffed or changed or anything. In fact, they've nerfed Thunderous Roar and its bleed buffing capabilities all the time. And these capstones have been nerfed as well, so there might be a weird situation where we end up taking all three capstone talents. So we're back into a place where ARMS has a lot of ability bloat again, which is kind of odd that they're trying to get rid of that, because Cleave now replaces Whirlwind on the ARMS side if you end up taking it, and Whirlwind's damage itself is so pathetic right now that anytime you're actually doing real AoE, you're going to want Cleave anyway. So just having all these, it's a good change that it's replacing Whirlwind, but having Spear, Avatar, Roar, potentially Bladestorm again, you're kind of forced into taking Shockwave most of the time. As somebody who's used to playing with a ton of keybinds, this isn't a massive deal to me, but as somebody getting into the spec, ARMS is going to have the potential for a lot of buttons, especially in PvP, where you're going to be grabbing Double Stun, and Intimidating Shout, possibly Wrecking Throw or Shattering Throw, and Intervene. It's just a ton of buttons. But yeah, I'm already rambling ahead of myself here. Colossus, what it's doing right now, we get this new ability called Demolish. It flows really well, actually, with the way the spec has worked out. Blizzard has definitely wanted to slow down the entire playstyle of ARMS, and they succeeded with the way that they've kind of normalized Rage again, and the way that the abilities cost Rage. So Rend is only 20, Slam is only 20, Whirlwind's only 20, Thunderclap's only 20. It's only Mortal Strike and Execute that break that mold a bit as your major spending spells. They also took off the Rage generation from Thunderous Roar. Still we have a little bit on Spear and Avatar. Bladestorm no longer gives you Rage during its duration, other than your auto attacks through it. They did, however, buff Bladestorm by 70%, which I really like. And Unhinged actually got changed, so they removed Hurricane completely, so it's not even an option anymore. But Unhinged was casting 2 Mortal Strikes. Now it's every other time it deals damage, so it's actually 3. So it's back to like what it was originally in Legion, casting 3 Mortal Strikes, and it synergizes really well with Colossus and Demolish, as well as Slayer, you would imagine, since it's all about buffing Bladestorm. We also got Ravager back, so playing around on beta here, like, if it's a pure single-target long boss fight, you'd probably drop the Bladestorm and go back into the Execute talents like you do on live. But if it's a shorter fight, Bladestorm might actually see some use in single target or even Ravager, I could see Ravager being a big thing with Unhinged, just because the way that Mortal Strikes synergize so well with Demolish and the Colossus tree. So every time you MS, you're getting a stack of this Colossal Might buff, which is buffing Demolish, and once you overcap on 10 stacks, it's going to reduce the cooldown on it, and it's also buffing all your other abilities. So you just want to cast as many Mortal Strikes as possible, and every crit will give you a stack as well. Execute will give you a couple of stacks, the way it is at the moment. So there's just you want to be casting a ton of MSs, so Unhinged is naturally playing into that, whereas I could see Ravager, being pretty good. Bladestorm's just more fun to me, so that's what I've been messing around with on beta. Another change is In for the Kill is going to last the full duration of CS, so if you're running blunt instruments, you're just getting 13 seconds instead of 10. And since the spec has slowed down so much, at least in this early gear, the haste is really valuable. So, been playing it over Test of Might at the moment. I imagine, later in the expansion, when we have a lot of stats and higher gear values, Test of Might's going to take the place again. We'll see. I really don't like this talent. I wish they would get rid of it. Warbreaker still exists for, heavy AoE. One thing I've noticed, though, is that they've kind of split up a lot of the talents on the arms tree. This Finishing Blows one was baked into Strength of Arms before. Now that's broken into two things. Dreadnought no longer gives extra charges. It's been nerfed drastically, so it's not nearly as good for AoE. Instead, Improved Overpower is what's giving 2 charges to Overpower. Speaking of 2 charges, Sudden Death can now stack twice, which is just a nice quality of life buff, so you're not overcapping that in case you can't, immediately spend that Execute. Battle Lord got nerfed a little bit. There's just been a ton of, small nerfs and splitting of things, and they removed a few talents, which is nice, but with the way they broke up the AoE is kind of odd to me, because anytime you're on a raid fight, you're just going to be going mostly single targets, and Arms always has Sweeping Strikes, thankfully. So, if there's light cleave, that's usually going to be good enough between, Roar and Sweeping Strikes to get the job done. Unless it's a prolonged AoE raid fight, but those are pretty few and far between. In which case, you're kind of forced into speccing into cleave right now. Storm of Swords and, Collat and these, maybe. And Fervor of Battle now procs off cleave as well, giving you that free slam, which can also be Sweeping Strike. So you're dropping a few Execute talents probably for this, but it makes me wonder if in those fights, a lot of times in raid fights, it's not consistent AoE, so it's lined up burst windows of adds, in which case wouldn't you be better off just speccing into Bladestorm anyway, with Unhinged, the way things are kind of working out? Because Demolish does AoE damage as well, and you can Sweeping Strikes it onto 2 targets, so it's getting the full damage on at least 2 targets, as well as the splash at the very end of the cast that hits everything within 8 yards of it. So, yeah, this is just a ton of me rambling, but I wanted to talk about Arms right now. So Thunderous Words got nerfed. All of these capstones are a little underwhelming. I could see us taking Uproar and this over Spear. It just depends, because they haven't really buffed Spear. But I did want to talk about Champion's Might with the potential of grabbing Spear over these talents, because crit is going to be so important for Arms. I mean, it already is, but it's just getting even more important with talents like this, giving us another 10% crit damage. The fact that Mortal Strike crits giving us double stacks of Colossal Mights, plus we have Impale originally. Sharpened Blades is more crit damage. Cruel Strikes is more crit damage, so the value of crit just gets better and better. So I'm wondering if they're not buffing Champion Spear, because they're afraid of all the crit stacking is going to make Demolish just hit like an absolute train. And it already does on beta. If it crits and you get lucky with it, it can do just nasty damage if you line up everything. But it is weird that we're having all of these cooldowns that you just have to stack at the same time again. And Blizzard in the past has not wanted us to just stack everything, so we'll see how that plays out. But these are all minute-and-a-half CDs if you're not taking Uproar. And none of them are reduced by anger management. It's just Bladestorm and Colossus Smash. So every minute and a half, you're just lining up all this stuff with demolish more than likely. The way it plays out, you might have to, wait for 10 seconds if you get unlucky with procs. But otherwise, every minute and a half, you're just hitting a jumbo demolish. And usually, you can follow it up with a Blade Storm if you're spec'd into it, or a Ravager. But I like Blade Storm because this 6-second window, you can fit in demolish, roar, and the Blade Storm, plus the 3 unhinged mortal strikes. It's just a lot of burst damage. And for any, like I said, ad spawning in a window area, that's just perfect setup to blow up everything immediately. And this is like generally a single target build too. It's not even accounting for Mythic Plus. But anyway, I'm super rambling now. To show off like what you can do with this just on a target dummy here, ignoring the fact that it's an execute range. But we can go in and like put up our bleeds and then, pop CDs, and it's just so much cycling into demolish, and then you can Blade Storm out of it within this window. And as you can see here, every time you MS, you're gaining a stack. And if those unhinged mortal strikes crit, you're gaining 2 stacks. And you can get back up to 10 stacks so fast with unhinged, and if you get lucky. And that's just immediately lowering the cooldown on demolish, so you can get this rolling about every 30 seconds, just like Colossus Smash with anger management. And this is where things get really interesting with just Colossus in general, is anytime there's 2 targets, you can Sweeping Strikes, obviously. But every Sweeping Strike's Mortal Strike is going to give you 2 stacks, and if they crit, that's double. And Execute gives you 2 anyway. So with Blade Storm Unhinged, you're sweeping that, getting 3 free Mortal Strikes that are cleaving, that's 6. If they all crit, you can just get insanely fast CDR on demolish if you get lucky. Hence why the value of crit is just going to go up and up and up. And Champion's Might is getting more and more value. So, yeah, I could see it getting out of hand, I guess. At least in 2-target cleave, it's not nearly that bad in just pure single target, where you might just go back into Juggernaut instead of Blade Storm. But yeah, those are my thoughts so far on Colossus, the way it's looking. It's a ton of fun to actually press the button. I like that. It's not nearly as irritating, the fact that you can't move during it. I have noticed, though, if your target moves out of range, it'll just auto-stop casting it, which sucks that it moves out of range, but at least it doesn't lock you in position if it's not actually hitting the target at that point. Anyway, moving on a little bit to like a cleave build for AoE. This was playing around in like Mythic Plus and stuff. We're still going to grab Thunderclap and Blood and Thunder to put rend up on everything, I would imagine. This Seismic Reverberation still exists. We do have a new talent here, or rather they redesigned Barbaric Training. You're just going to take this all the time instead of Sidearm, I'd imagine. It's just buff and cleave and everything. And this one, I was playing around with Uproar and the Bleed talents. Honestly, I could see dropping these. Maybe you would still want Uproar for Mythic Plus just for more consistent damage, but the burst off Spear would be really nice. They've redesigned Dance of Death, so it's going to benefit Blade Storm and Ravager. It's kind of awkward to use. I mean, you read the tooltip, buffing it by 5% and increasing the duration. It feels more usable on Ravager than it does Blade Storm because it has to kill something during it to get the benefit. It's kind of awkward. Merciless Bone Grinder still exists, but it's slightly different just because, it's only buffing one or the other since you only have Cleave or Whirlwind. Cleave has a different cooldown now, but it's reduced by haste, so it's 3.7. You can see in 21% haste that I'm at right there. So Cleave does feel good to use, especially with collateral damage and Fervor of Battle. I could see a very consistent AoE build going into Mythic Plus with this, and we get Blade Storm, so unlike the collateral damage build that we were playing a couple of seasons ago in Dragonflight, you will still be able to pick up, Blade Storm at least with this, because you're not getting as much value out of Battlelord, because it's not buffing Dreadnought anymore. You'll probably still take Dreadnought, in the bleed benefit talents. But yeah, this one, it's alright, I like it. Storm of Swords, not Storm of Swords, Exhilarating Blows will actually have some value with Merciless Bone Grinder now, because if you get lucky with the procs on it, you could get a ton of value out of this, spamming cleaves. Otherwise, you're probably only going to get 2 out of the window, maybe 3, depending on, you know, haste values. So maybe you would end up dropping Merciless Bone Grinder for, you know, some more execute damage somewhere along the way, or some more rage generation. Skull Splitter feels alright. It's going to be for single target again. I kind of hope it's not meta, frankly, because we have a ton of buttons if things end up, you know, going the Champion Spear route. We'll have to wait and see on tuning on that one. But, yeah, going into, like, okay, on some AoE stuff here, we could, you know, put up CDs, and then you want to probably get Cleave on cooldown now, and then I already messed that up. We should have demolished before spinning there, and then sweeping strikes with that. But Cleave having such a low cooldown. Speaking of which, ignore the damage numbers down here. All the add-ons on beta are not working properly. This is more for just reference on SCADA. But yeah, anyway, I'm rambling now. I think that about covers everything that I want to talk about on Colossus today. It is nice having Shockwave, you know, readily available. It's some kind of utility. Another shout out, I guess, is Second Wind, getting buffed slightly, that it's going to restore 1% HP every second when you're below 35%, up to 2% the closer you are to death. So this isn't as good as it used to be back in Miss Pandaria when it was 3% and everybody whined that it was overpowered, but I'm glad to see it's at least useful now and not just a dead talent. Speaking of dead talents, the redesign of Blade Master's Torment, kind of dead in its current iteration, I would say anyway, because the cleave cooldown reduction is nice, but activating Sweeping Strikes put Sweeping Strikes on cooldown, which just seems terrible. I don't know why that would, you know, it would be okay if it was separated and then you could back it up with another Sweeping Strikes. But as it is, I don't know if that's a bug or not, but it doesn't seem very useful. And this talent just doesn't seem very good either. It's not good enough for the 1.5-minute cooldown on Avatar. But yeah, you guys have any thoughts or questions about Colossus Arms? Feel free to leave them down below. I've done some raid testing and some dungeon testing on beta. I'll try to get some of that up soon, TM. We'll see how that goes. Let me know if you guys want to see something specific. Obviously, I'll look at Slayer later when it's working properly. But anyway, if you made it this far, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.